Hello there, and welcome to episode 13 of the Or So She Says podcast. Oh, I'm very excited. First podcast of the new year. Happy New Year, everyone. And I think the title of this podcast is absolutely perfect for this time of year. So this podcast is how to set and achieve any goal, cultivate real motivation, and truly trust the process. So this episode is actually a little bit different to my usual episodes. It's actually a live recording from an event I did in Dublin last year. I was actually going to re-record the topics, but then I listened back on it and I actually just loved the energy of the live record, and I loved the questions that were asked. They were amazing. So I actually just thought I would share that energy with you. If you enjoyed this episode, please do not forget to give it a rating on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening. Please subscribe and share with a friend or a family, or share it on your social media. As always, your support is greatly appreciated, and I really hope you enjoy. So today we are going to be talking about a couple of things. My favorite thing to talk about, mindset. Any of my clients will be like, she's a personal trainer, she does nutrition, she just talks about mindset all the time. So I was like, of course I'm going to do a talk on mindset. So a little bit about me before we start today. Okay, so for anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Nerissa. I discovered today on the way in that I was like, oh my God, I am 33, not 32, because I was doing quick maths all wrong, and it's my birthday next month. I was like, nearly in my mid-30s, what? And I am a personal trainer, I am a yoga teacher, I am EIQ nutrition certified. I also worked as a professional dancer for 10 years, which is how I actually know a lot of these amazing people here. And I actually have my master's degree in applied sport and exercise psychology, which is why I am obsessed with all things mindset. Now, standard how I got into this, I kind of went and did my BA in dance and performing arts. Then I kind of went touring for a couple of years, decided to go back and do my master's, and was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to use this. And I was like, yeah, no, fuck that. I'm actually just going to go back on tour again. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And then I kind of ended up coming into the personal training space and realizing like just how much of that master's I'm actually using in my coaching day to day, and how really it does come down to, you know, behavior change and mindset. And that really is the difference. So that is how I have ended up here today. So just before we start, this is kind of like my vision and mission, not just for today, not just for my coaching, but kind of what my vision and mission is for my own life. So firstly, I want to empower as many women as I can through education to realize they hold more power over their lives than they think. And I think a lot of us suffer from this. We suffer from this feeling that we don't have control of our lives because we think it's out of our hands, or this is happening and this is happening. And you know, I think a lot of that comes down to one of the most empowering things we can do is educate ourselves, okay? And I don't mean like getting schooled, education system. I'm saying like educate yourself in matters that actually mean something to you. And we're going to be talking a lot about like values and stuff like that today as well. So I love this acronym, KEY, knowledge empowers you. And I think anyone who's worked with me or any other coach before will say, you know, like just by teaching us these fundamentals of nutrition and training or whatever it is, or yoga, anything, it's the most empowering thing, because then you understand you have more control over things in your life. So I think knowledge, and I know Ellen is going to be talking, where is Ellen? Oh, there, right in front of you. You're going to be talking a lot about this, like the importance of like education. Like when she told me, she was on my podcast, she told me she was 19, I literally nearly spat my coffee out and dropped the microphone. I was like, wait, what? I was like, you've done all of these qualifications. And she was like, I just am a firm believer that education, and the more I can educate other people, it empowers you to make more empowered choices, really, okay? I also want to innovate the world of health, fitness, and wellness, and kind of dancing world as well. And I think a lot of people in this space, like coming from a dancing background and stuff, can say the world needs it. I really do think so. In order to make it more accessible to everyone as well. I think there's so much misinformation out there online, on TikTok, on Instagram, on everything. It makes things so confusing for people. And when I have clients come to me, they're just like, I actually just don't even know where to start with things. Strip things back, like that's saying that if you can't explain something simply, you're not doing it correctly. Like my job is not done if I cannot explain something to someone in the simplest forms. And I think most coaches can agree with that. And if people are flaunting stuff online, using big words and all this terminology, trying to confuse people. They're just trying to impress other coaches in the space, and they're not actually doing, the people that need it a service. So to innovate that world is something as well. And then to inspire as many women as I can to realize and see the infinite power they have within them to become the best versions of themselves and live their life to the fullest. And I think all of you are amazing. Like this morning was just so magical, and just hearing a lot of the cards and the things that came up, which is there's a lot of common themes around, and I just think, I was like, these women have the ability to change the world. They just have to believe in themselves. So what I'm going to talk about today, we're going to split this into two parts, because my God, if I do all of this in one go, you're either going to be completely information overload, or you're just never going to want to hear me speak again, which isn't going to bode well for me trying to push my podcasts and stuff on people later. So the whole first half of this talk, which is going to be a bit longer and it's going to be a bit more interactive, is how to actually effectively set goals and monitor progress. And I'm not just saying we're going to get our pens out and we're just going to write down what we want, right? Because you've probably tried that before, and by just doing that, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. Writing things down is the first set point. But to actually effectively set goals, we're going to touch on a couple of different aspects. We're going to talk a little bit about things that incorporate a little bit of neuroscience, a little bit of psychology with a little bit of manifestation, but without completely overloading you. And it's going to be interactive as well. So I actually don't want to wait till the end for you to ask me questions. If there's anything you're confused about throughout it, ask me. You can ask me at the end as well, but don't feel like you can't ask me throughout this, okay? And then I'm going to give you a little break to have a coffee, because you're going to be like, Jesus, shush for a minute, Nerissa. And then we're going to talk about the thing that I get asked about. If I had €1 every time I got asked about motivation in my DMs, I'd be a rich woman. I'd actually be able to afford my coffee addiction in Dublin. It's how to actually cultivate real motivation, how to deal with times when you don't have motivation. And my most important thing that I try to instill onto my clients is how to truly trust the process, or we try and do one better and try and fall in love with the process, okay? Because that's what it's all about. So, this is my question straight off the bat. Do you ever find yourself setting really big goals, right? Really, really exciting goals. You buy all the things you need for the goals, you get the new gym gear, you do everything. Just want to warn you, I work as a fat loss coach, right? So a lot of my examples today are going to be tied to that, so I do apologize. But this can be tied into anything, okay? You buy everything you need, you're super motivated, and you're like, this is going to be great. And 2 weeks into it, you lose all your motivation, you can't be arsed anymore. Happened to anyone? Hands up. Yes, I've done it recently. I decided that I was going to get really into investing, and that lasted a month, and then I was like, I actually don't really care about this anymore. But the thing about it is we're going to talk about motivation a lot in the second half of this, but a lot of us are always relying on motivation to do things, but we can't rely on motivation to get there. The first step, though, in getting to where we want to go actually comes down to goal setting. But before we go into goal setting, I want to talk to you about values. So values is we actually talked about this in our podcast recently, me and Sarah. It's something that is such a buzzword, and the wellness space is really, really pushing it out there on people that they need to get clear on their values. And what are your values? Because it's very important to make value-based decisions. But a lot of the time, I ask people and I ask clients on their intake form, right? I'm like, what are your values? And they come back and they say, family, friends, socializing. Do you know what? Ironically, very rarely they actually say health and fitness, which is funny because I'm going to talk about that in a bit. But they'll say all these things, and I'm like, okay, grand. It's a starting point, right? That's fine. They've started thinking about it now. That's the main thing. But then I introduced this concept of rules, which I love. This book I read a couple of years ago, Code of the Extraordinary Mind by Vishen Lakhiani, he talks about rules, which is basically bullshit rules. So it's all these things that society tells you that you want, but we actually don't even really know if that is something we want. And the reason why I actually love to tie this in with values is because a lot of the time we will say our values are something, but they're not actually what our values are. They're what we think our values should be. And that's not to say someone comes back and they say family, and I go, oh, but is family really a value? Of course family can be a value. But this is where the biggest trap comes in society. We get told you have to go to school. You then go to school, you go to secondary school, get good grades, go to college. go to college, you should probably go and do your master's. Go and do your master's, get a good job, ride the corporate ladder up to the top. You're like, yeah, okay, grand. Then what? Right, find the partner, get married, have the kids, get the house. And all the while when you're doing this, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when, I'll be happy when I get the new car, I'll be happy when I get the new job, when I get the promotion. Constantly placing your happiness in the future, right? And a lot of this comes down to rules, because we're constantly told that this is something that we should value and this is something we should chase. And now that's not to say that we don't want it, but question everything and question if it is something that you really, really want, okay? So a rule is a bullshit rule that we adopt to simplify our understanding of the world. They're usually handed down by our tribe, often our family, culture, and education system. And when we aren't sure what to do, we become sheep and we just decide, right, we're going to follow the example of those that came before us. Once again, I am not saying that this is wrong. And by all means, whatever path you are on, no matter what, like if it is climbing the corporate ladder and you enjoy that, that's amazing. I'm not telling you not to do that. But if you're unhappy in something in your life, you need to decide, is this actually what I want? And question it, and really, really do question it and be like, fundamentally, what is the value behind this? So values are basic and fundamental beliefs that guide or motivate attitudes or actions, and they help us to determine what is important to us. So what I mean by that is, you are kind of being guided subconsciously, and Rachel does a lot of work on the subconscious mind, and I know you mentioned the subconscious mind earlier, like we're being guided constantly in our decisions by these things, okay? And without us even knowing, a lot of that is coming back down to what our core values are. If we don't know what they are, setting goals straight off the bat is going to be difficult. And I love this one. And I have clients here, and I know they would have said it to me, so I apologize in advance. I say, what are your goals? And they say, weight loss, just weight loss. And I'm like, okay, right, let's dig deep here. Let's go into the why. But before that, can you even question, where is this goal coming from? Is this another rule that you're told that you'll be happy when? You'll be happy when. So I want you to get your pen and paper out, and no one is going to be called upon to read this out, okay? I want you to think of the most important thing to you in your life, right? And if you had to pick a top 5 list, what would be at the top? Now, it can be anything. These are just examples, okay? Family, friends, human connection, career, success, money, financial freedom, travel, socializing, health and fitness. It can be whatever you want. And if it's not on that list, it doesn't matter, right? But if you had to pick a top 5, and it doesn't need to be number 1 is your favorite and number 5 is meh, I just want you to take a couple of minutes and actually think about your top 5 here. But I also want you to think, do I actually value this, or am I writing this down because I think this is what I should value? Because there's a massive difference there between the two. And while you're having to think of that, I'm going to talk to you about why this might tie in a little bit with goal setting, okay? So keep writing, keep thinking. You don't have to look at me. You don't have to even listen to me if you don't want. But I always use this as an example. What are my values, right? And I get really clear on them. I'm like, health and fitness is a value of mine, right? And it always has been. I've always been very active. I worked as a dancer for years. So even though I partied hard, right? Health and fitness was always still in the back of my head because that's how I grew up, right? So when it comes to goal setting and setting goals in the fitness realm or kind of the nutrition realm, even though I'm not saying they're going to be easy, I'm more inclined to be a bit more motivated to stick with it because it's a value of mine. So I make these decisions and it becomes more of a priority. Another value of mine, and I love this one, is travel, right? And a lot of people say, oh, travel, you want to go and see the world, Instagram photos, great, blah, blah, blah. No, that's not it. Like, I value travel because whenever I go over to, like, I don't know, when I got to Japan or when I went to, like, Bali and stuff like that, you get and meet the local people. You get such a culture shock. And it opens your eyes to be like, maybe the way we see the world isn't just the way it is. Like, maybe there's another way to do things, right? And I love that. I love when I actually land in a country and get like my eyes blown open, my world blown apart, and I'm like, God, I've thought this my whole life. And maybe there's a better way of doing it. Because we're so stuck into this westernized culture where we think we're so ahead of the world and we're so advanced in technology. But a lot of the time, like a lot of us, what are we doing here today? We're coming back to these spiritual practices. These things that have been around, women's circles have been around for years, like, and then we're back here doing all this again. And like, you have to question then, maybe maybe there is another way of doing things, which once again comes back into questioning your values. So you have your top 5 now, or even if you have a top 3, it's fine. It's just kind of a basis to go on. Now we're going to get into actually talking about goals, right? So why set goals at all? And some people are avid goal setters. They love setting goals. They love writing things down. I personally am a big fan of a vision board. And something that's really cool is I actually had this. I mean, I had no idea how it was going to happen, but I had like host an event, public speak at an event at the start of this year, and I had no idea how it was going to come about. So today I was very like, happened. That's not to say you write something down that it just happens. We all know that. Now, no matter, yes, we're going to be talking about manifestation and stuff with Vilta later, but equally, you don't just write it down. Yes, you do have to trust in the universe, but you also need to work towards it. So how can we give ourselves a little bit of an oomph? We need to set goals, because goals give us a trajectory, okay? If you have no fucking idea where you want to go, right, how are you going to get there? Like, you might end up there, and sometimes you do achieve these goals without even, like, necessarily planning it to a T. But anyone that's working with me or is a yoga student of mine, I'm like, Google Maps, Google Maps. I'm always saying, I'm Google Maps, you drive the car. I decided it wouldn't be right to do a talk without mentioning Google Maps. I think I should be sponsored by them at this stage. Like, I love this example here where it says, if you were going to get into the car, I'd say you're coming from Mayo today. Shout out to the Mayo girls, right? And you wanted to get to the airport, but you needed to get to Dublin Airport Terminal 1. Are you just going to go airport? Hope for the best. Might end up in Knock, might end up in Cork, who knows, YOLO. Like, you have to be specific. I want to go to Dublin Airport Terminal 1. So you put that in. So I love this analogy of Google Maps because I'm like, this works so well with goals. Like, they need to be specific. Like, it's okay to have more vague goals in the future, but the more specific you can be about actually what you want and have a clear vision. One of you pulled a card earlier and it was something about vision for the future. Who was that? Someone had, I think it was your card. Something about a vision or something, a clear vision for the future. Was it? Something like that, but someone else had a card about a clear vision. It was something about a clear vision, and I was like, that's it. But that's it. You need a clear vision about what you want. So with that in mind, I'm going to task you with this. Now, originally this event was supposed to be in September. So it was kind of 90 days in the run up to Christmas that I was like, this is a nice time. But we're still going to aim Christmas or 90 days, right? What would you like to achieve in the next 90 days? And I want you to be very, very specific and write this down and think about it. Now, this can be fitness related, it can be career related, it can be body composition related, it can be whatever you want, right? The reason why I'm saying 90 days is 90 days is a really nice time frame, and the Huberman Lab, Andrew Huberman, he did a podcast on goal setting, and he was saying about 90 days being a nice time frame to think about what you want. I'm going to give you a couple of minutes here, but it's not too short, and it's not too long into the future that you're kind of like keep pushing stuff back. But I also want you to think something you want to achieve by the end of this year, and all yous are here for a reset. So think, I want you to be specific about what you want, but also dream big. What do you want to achieve in the next 90 days? I'm not going to ask you to share this unless you want to share it, so it can be whatever you want. I'm actually loving the confused look on people's faces because they're like, wow, what do I want? Because a lot of us are afraid to actually be like, well, what do I actually want? Because then it gets real. Because then what sets in when you start thinking about what you want? Oh my God, fear failure. What if I can't get this? What if I write this down, but I don't achieve it? Which we're going to talk about later. But I want you to really, really think, like, why do you want to achieve this goal? And more importantly, when you do achieve this goal, how are you going to feel? And we're going to talk about intrinsic motivation a lot today, which is that kind of feeling, okay? Also, yeah, if you ran out of paper and you need phones, you can write it on your notes. Because we all live really busy lives, and when it comes to achieving any goal, it does take time and a certain degree of effort. But if we can get clear on our values, and we then get clear on our goals, at least we have a bit of trajectory, right? Because everyone is going to struggle with low motivation. We're going to talk about that a lot later. I want you to look at that goal you've just written down. I want you to ask yourself why. Then you're going to ask yourself why again. 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 And while you're thinking about that, I'm going to tell you. Someone comes to me and they tell me weight loss is my goal, right? Why? I want my clothes to fit a bit better. Why? Because when my clothes fit a bit better, I have a lot more confidence and I'm a lot more outgoing. Why? When I'm a lot more outgoing, I go to a lot more social occasions. I talk to a lot of people. I have more confidence to speak to someone, and maybe I'm trying to meet a partner. Why? I desire, value, connection. And there's a why. Someone tells me they want to get a little bit fitter, and they keep going to their why, and they're like, I actually ultimately want to have more energy to play with my kids so that my kids aren't looking at me being like, Mom, can we do this? And I actually don't have the energy to play with my kids. That's a very strong why. So all of a sudden, we've taken a very, very vague goal and turned it into something that's very, very meaningful to someone, that means a lot and causes a lot of feels. Because when you're setting these big goals, like, you need to connect it to a feeling. And I actually love this. Milton had to run off for half an hour and I'm raging because she was actually probably the one who took this photo. But in this, like, this was my yoga teacher training. I had one arm in this, right? I absolutely wankered my arm 2 days before the end of the course, and I had to do my examino with one arm. And I remember thinking at the time, like, okay, I have this goal, and I can either like throw in the towel or whatever. And I just kept focusing on that feeling of holding that certificate and being like, I did this, even though I had one fucking arm. It was hilarious. I was teaching and I was going around and literally was like this. And because I had such a strong association with why I wanted to do something, you find a way through when life keeps going, here's shit, here's more shit, here's more shit, here's more shit, because life, unfortunately, loves to throw spanners in the works. But if you have a strong why, that is the first step towards achieving your goal. It's also the first step with dealing with low motivation. So we're going to talk about the types of goals. And everyone talks about SMART goals till the cows come home, and we will touch on that. But this is probably the most important thing to consider when it comes to goal setting. Everyone, you've just written it down, focuses on this, the outcome, what they want to achieve. I'm like, oh, I want to host an event. That's the outcome, right? And if I constantly just focus on the outcome, the event, it's never going to happen because I'm not really going to do much to actually get there unless I focus on the process. And the process is the unsexy, boring shit you have to do every day in order to get to your goals. So this is like the technique or the strategy of how you're actually going to get there. So if you have this outcome result, and once again, I'm going to talk about, like, say, a body composition standpoint, it's hitting your protein nearly every day whenever you can, hopefully every day. It's staying in your calorie deficit when you can. It's trying to get your training sessions in every week. It's ticking the boxes every day, every week that you need to do. Maybe it's something to do with, like, running your business is the outcome, right? But what are the they're probably the things, ironically, that you procrastinate the most in your business as well, or when you're in this, you'll procrastinate them because you're so focused on the outcome. And I talk about this later, is if we can actually start to not only trust that process and what you're doing, but find some joy in it and enjoy it, the results always follow and the outcome always follows. And the irony is people set goals, right? And you actually can't control the outcome. Like, there's dancers here, right? You train so hard in the run up to the Worlds. You practice every day. You go to all your dancing classes. You go to all the feshes, right? But on that day, you have absolutely no control over who's going to be judging you, over potentially how you dance. All you have is, like, you're going to try your best. Or you have a job interview or something. You've prepared for it. You've done everything you can. You can't control the outcome of it, but you can control the process. And too many people get so focused on the outcome of their goal, they just completely negate the process, which is why they keep not hitting their goals. And performance goals are things in the middle that, like, say, from, like, a training standpoint, I have a goal of squatting my body weight or deadlifting 2 times my body weight or something like that. And they're great to kind of keep you motivated on the way to the outcome, and they push you a little bit out of the process, a little bit into performance, but still not focused on that end goal, which is really cool, because they give you a little bit of a boost along the way. All you can ever control is the controllables, and you cannot control the outcome, but you can control the process. So, first thing we're going to do, you're going to set quantifiable goals with tangible targets. It's one of them really annoying things that personal trainers say. No shade to the personal trainers, but you know you're not one of these trainers anyway, so you'll agree with me. What gets measured gets managed, right? If you're just saying, I have this goal, and I'm not saying if someone comes to me and they have a fat loss goal or whatever their goal is, okay? I'm not saying they come to me and they have to do their measurements and they have to do their photos and they have to do this, but we need some markers there to know whether what we're doing is working. Now, for some people, that is doing their measurements, it's taking their photos. For other people, it's like, how am I feeling? Because feeling is tangible. Do I have more energy? Am I sleeping better? Are my stress levels improved? Am I actually enjoying life a little bit more and just a little bit more present? And then maybe you'll start standing up for yourself in jobs. Maybe you'll start actually like putting yourself forward for more things. These are all tangible things, and then you know it's working. But you have to have something there to know whether this is working. So I want you to think about your goal now. And I want you to ask yourself, firstly, we're going to use this SMART acronym that is everywhere. There's one of them I don't really agree with, but is it specific? Look down at your piece of paper. Is it really specific, or is it very vague? And then I want to ask you, is it measurable? And how are you going to measure that? And I can't tell you exactly what you're going to use for this. I can only tell you if you're someone who's coming to me for like coaching, what we'd use. But whatever your goal is, how are you going to measure it? How are you going to decide if this is working, what you are doing? Okay? And then the third one is achievable, but like, I do say dream big, but achievable realistically. I started running only like a month ago and ran my first 5K last week. I was like, am I really going to sign up for the Dublin Marathon this week? Like, it'd be hilarious. Like, it'd be great to see. I'd go running with Sinead and she'd literally just be gone. Our friend runs marathons, like they're literally 10Ks. But like, it needs to be in some way, shape or form achievable. Like, you're not going to jump from there and be like, I believe I can fly, so I'm going to fly. Like, I'm all for self-belief, but within the realms of it being realistic enough, we'll say. But also you need to dream big, because I love this, the plane. Like, I always just think it's like one of them amazing things in life that I was like, there was people in this world that had a vision that we could fly. Now, we all get on planes every other day and we don't even think about it. But at one point, that was massive, like, huge. There was people there that were like, I actually believe that there's these big, massive things that are going to just go up in the air and take people from one country to the next. That was unheard of at the time. So if they just stayed within that realistic thing and that achievable thing and didn't branch out, we'd never have that. Same way, actually, we wouldn't have the Harry Potter books, because she got turned down like 12 times before she got a publisher. So I always am like, she dreamed big as well. And the last thing is time-based. And as I said, I really like 90 days for setting a goal, but I also believe that you should have short-term goals, maybe like a month, medium-term goals, that 90 days maybe, and then long-term goals have a year, and then I like to do 5 years as well. You don't have to do them now, but I'm saying when you take this away, it'd be something I do. The last thing here is a little thing I do with my clients, and it's a little thing called if and then. So if this happens, I'm going to do this. So a good example of this is if I have a nurse who's doing a lot of shift work, and they say, oh, every time someone comes in with like the big thing of donuts, and I've done 12 hours of the shift, and I'm so tired, and I just don't care about my goals anymore. If they do that, then I have a load of actually like snacks or protein bars in my cupboard thing that I'm going to go to, right? That's just an example, but it's putting things in place for when shit doesn't go to plan. And that can really, really help you when you feel like the world is against you with your goals sometimes, which sometimes it can be, but you need to stay the path. The next thing I am forever going on and on and on and on about is proactive self-compassion and delayed gratification. So we have gone so far, in my opinion, into the self-compassion realm that it's nearly gone, in my opinion, a little bit too far sometimes, because people are sacrificing everything for the sake of YOLO, right? And there needs to be some sort of balance there. If it's something you really want to achieve, and like what I'll use here as an example is you're going to go through periods of your life where you just have to, like, I know that phrase is really funny, but head down, arse up, just do it. When I launched my business, it was 6 months I worked every single day. Now, I'm not recommending it, and I'm not recommending people not taking time to rest and rejuvenate, but sometimes you're going to go through periods like that, and if I kept pressing the fuck it button and just saying YOLO, I wasn't going to get to where I want to go. So it needs to be some sort of proactive self-compassion. And the easiest way you can do that is in any given situation, ask yourself, what can I do now that my future self will thank me for? Right, so before I go on, does anyone want to take a little drink, go to the toilet, ask some questions? Maybe stand up, walk around for a second, because I've been talking for a little while and the heat is on. Go on, go for a little walk. 2 minutes, I'll time you. So as I said, what can I do now that my future self will thank me for in any given situation? And the easiest way to practice this is start incorporating delayed gratification. So what's delayed gratification? It basically means resisting the temptation of an immediate reward in anticipation that there will be something better later on, okay? The opposite of this, instant gratification, it's snoozing the alarm, it's scrolling on social media when you're supposed to be doing your stuff for your exams, it's pushing things, procrastinating, things like that, reaching for, are you all peeing? Oh, I'm sorry. Are you okay? I'm just aware of the time, okay. Hey. And I think it's one of the most powerful tools you can actually start implementing. Is it easy when you first start doing it to actually set the alarm an hour earlier and just get up? No, it's really hard. But the more you do it, the more you prove to yourself you can, which we're going to talk about more in motivation. So imperfect action and consistency over perfection. Oh my God, I think I'm just going to get consistency over perfection like tattooed on my arm here, because I'd say my clients are so sick of me saying it. But honestly, coming from the school system and everything that we've come from, like we have this whole notion of perfectionism, fear of failure. If I'm not going to do things 100%, what's the point in doing them at all? Does anyone feel like that? Hands up. Yeah. And like, has it actually ever served you? Do you ever think back when you're a kid, right? And you actually did not give a fuck about making all the mistakes because you're like, well, that's how I learn. That is how I learn. How am I ever going to learn if I don't make mistakes? So we all of a sudden shifted from like being like okay with all these mistakes to all of a sudden being terrified to make mistakes. And this has just led to actually just this perfectionism mentality. I actually did my thesis on perfectionism. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole or you will be here for 3 hours, and I do not want to pain you with that, right? But it's crippling. There's 2 types of perfectionism. There's neurotic perfectionism, which is like a maladaptive type, which is bad. And then there's adaptive, which you can be a perfectionist, but you're like striving for excellence and you're totally okay with making mistakes, which in our school system, well, not so much now, I think it's changed now, but when we all kind of grew up, we're all similar-ish ages, like mistakes were wrong. You were bad. You did really good if you never made a mistake. And like those people there today who were kind of saying they were afraid of speaking up in circles, and hilarious that I'm up here talking because I used to get that. Like I used to be the person who like counted the lines of when I had to read, and I'd be shaking until I got my reading out of the way and then I'd be done. Because I was terrified of saying a word wrong. Like how crazy is that that's what school did to some of us, right? Because imperfect action is better than perfect inaction. And my nana, God rest her, right, she used to say this thing and I used to hear it in my head all the time, and I actually am like, sorry Nana, but I actually disagree with you now. She was like, if you're going to do something, do it properly or don't bother doing it at all. And I was like, okay. And all of a sudden now I'm like, no, wait. Just do fucking something. Something is better than none. You can't do your full hour workout. Why can't you do 10 minutes? You can't go to the gym today. Why can't you go for a little walk? But we go, if I can't do it perfect, I'm not going to bother at all. Because when we come back to motivation, action breeds motivation and motivation breeds action, right? So you have to do something, no matter how small. And it's about shifting from that all or nothing mentality to always something. And I will tell you one thing, I will hold my hands up. This is the thing I struggle with most in life. I am a neurotic perfectionist, true and true. If I send, my favorite WhatsApp feature is the fact you can edit things. Has anyone noticed that lately? Anyone else do that? I edit typos because it actually, I'm like, I can't look at that. Or I will send the little asterisks and correct myself when I do your and you are. I'm like, oh God. And I'm like, stop it. You are literally the definition of not practicing imperfect action. Because it is, like with any goals, it's going to be your consistency over time. It's not what you do today. It's It's not what you do just this week. It's going to be like what you do over the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of months, over the next 90 days. And then you'll get to a point, something like this moment, where you'll just be like, holy shit, I did it, and that's fucking class. And like taking stock in that. But that will only happen if you stop thinking that it needs to be perfect to start. All or nothing to always something, no matter how small. Morning routines. Anyone with kids, look away. You're like, my morning routine involves keeping a human alive, okay? Or in our case, like keeping ourselves alive, okay? But you need to do one thing every morning that reaffirms your goals. Now, everyone is thinking about the influencers, and they're like, I get up at 5 a.m. and I make my bed, I do that. And I'm like, you probably do that, maybe, but then you go back to bed. I was like, come on, let's be real. But I'm talking about the importance of this with regards to the subconscious mind, right? That these girls love. It's so powerful. And if you do one thing in the morning that reaffirms your goals, you are more inclined to carry out behaviors throughout that day that align with your goals, but you also do it with less decision fatigue, which means maybe you park a bit further from the door in the supermarket, maybe you take the stairs instead of the lift, all because you did maybe a couple of squats while you were waiting for the kettle to boil in the morning. And I know I've had clients who do like some push-ups and stuff like that, something just small in the morning, because then throughout the day, you're more inclined to carry out behaviors without actually overthinking it. Without it becoming an effort to do it, you're actually doing it on a subconscious level, which once again ties back to the power of the subconscious mind. So if you slay the morning, you will actually be more inclined to slay the day. And that's not just from a like, woo, woo, me going slay the day, slay queen. I'm actually saying on a like psychological level, like it actually does work. And again, people with kids are going to be like, shut the fuck up, I sleep when the kids sleep, okay? But if you do have control over your sleep, it is probably one of the most overlooked facets when it comes to behavior change, right? Because if you're not getting enough adequate quality and quantity sleep, you are going to struggle to do the shit the next day you need to do, okay? Because let's be real, who the fuck makes a good decision when they're tired? Anyone here? I'm a different person when I'm tired and hungry. Like, everyone's like, you're so positive and all, and I'm like, I'm horrible when I'm tired and hungry. Like, I'm literally a gremlin. I'm like, two things. I was going to say I'm an overgrown child, but not really that overgrown. It's like here, tired and hungry. I make terrible decisions and I just have no patience. Like, so I have to say, okay, what's the biggest hack for waking up early? I'm like, whoa, you have to start going to bed earlier. If you want to get up earlier and do these things in the morning, you need to go to bed earlier. And if that means having a cut-off point for TikTok, which is my thing. I use Instagram and everything for work, so I'm like, oh, they don't bother me not going on them, but TikTok, I'm like, just a little scroll, half an hour down a TikTok rabbit hole. So the next thing, and probably one of the most important things, and this kind of ties into perfectionism as well, it's the ability to reframe failure. And they did a lot of studies on kids who have like growth mindsets and fixed mindsets, and we're going to talk about that in the second half. But their ability to see failure as a way to grow and not a thing that's a roadblock stopping them was the difference between those kids who are actually excelling in things and actually learning more. And it was their ability to reframe failure. Because I get asked all the time, what do you think is the biggest barriers to people achieving their goals? Whatever realm you're in, like, I go two things outright, and it's not what you think. They quit, they give up. Because you only ever fail if you give up. Like, if you keep trying and knocking on that door, eventually something will happen. So you quit is number one, you give up. The other thing is they literally have no patience. And I'm someone who wants everything done yesterday, and I literally have no patience either. I'm like, go, 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 very high energy, typical Scorpio. But equally, like, having patience and ability to trust the process, trust the universe that it is going to work out if it's for you, while tying failure into being an opportunity to learn and grow is amazing. Like, and everyone, okay, we were lucky that this event was a huge success, but if this went absolutely tits up, I was doing this and I was like, well, if it goes to shit, you should really practice this. What did you learn? What can you do differently? And the only time I actually, and I never give out to my clients, like I never do, I'm very compassionate, right? The only time I get a little bit, we'll say, stern with them is when they have a terrible week, right? Everything goes tits up and I go, what's the plan for next week? And they're like, same as last week. I'm like, but it didn't work last week. And if you keep entering the week with the same plan and setting the same goals, but like not really changing how you're going to approach it, then the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Like, so you have to think, if things didn't work, what can I learn from it? And as I said, like, J.K. Rowling was turned down by 12 publishers before finding success. So we often think that like we try something once and we do it and it doesn't go to plan. And we're like, that's not for us. Oh, what's for us won't go by us. And I'm like, but sometimes if it is for you and you really care about it, there's a reason why you really care about it. You just have to find a different way to do it. And like we live with the world at our fingertips on phones. Like there's always someone to help us, but you have to reach out. So the last thing I'm going to talk about before I get you to take a little break and have a little coffee is you need to own your decisions, right? And this is probably one of the most empowering things I did, because I used to play the blame game with life all the time. I went wrong in that dance because so-and-so only sent me the steps yesterday. I fucked up in work because Katrina didn't send me the email until 9 o'clock last night. I did X, Y, Z because of X, Y, Z that was out of my control, and I hand all my power over to the people that it was their fault. It wasn't my fault. I did it because of this. Instead of actually just being like, and exactly like actually tying in to what Rachel said about vulnerability being a superpower, this is something I've leaned into a lot, is owning up to your own shit, right? It's actually very empowering, because you grab back your power then. You're like, I fucked up, but by actually saying that I fucked up, I hold the power in my hands to fix this. If I give that away to someone else, then I've essentially given away the ability to fix it as well. So you're disempowering yourself all the time. So like, you're all adults here, we're all adults, right? You have unconditional permission to do whatever you want. But your actions have consequences, and that's not like to sound like really threatening, but in any given situation, if you can do a little bit of what can I do now that my future self will thank me for, it will actually stand to you, okay? And owning them decisions, and when things go tits up, just being like, they're a mess, I did it, I take full responsibility to that. And I have a client here who said this to me recently, I'm not gonna point it out. She was like, X, Y, and Z happened, I take full responsibility for all of my actions, and I'm owning my decisions, and I know where to go from here. And I was like, that's the most empowering thing that you could have said, because you're not blaming. And actually one of them things was actually a funeral and stuff like that. So you can very much go down the blame game of saying, I couldn't do that because of that. They're like, I still did this, 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 this. I accept where I am. And because I accept where I am and my decisions, I know I have the power to take this further, where I need to go. The final forming of a person's character lies in their own hands. And as I said, one of my missions is to empower people to realize that they have a lot more power than they give themselves credit for. And I hope you end today feeling like you have a little bit more power. Any questions? No? Does everyone need a nap yet? Oh, yeah?
You know, the way you were saying, how do you change your way of thinking from, do you know, when you're setting goals and you're constantly trying to get to that next thing, I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
How do you kind of separate that from actually having a goal in your head
Okay.
and thinking that way?
As in you're constantly looking at the outcome goal?
Yeah, just focus on the processes.
Right, so this actually works with some people, and I read it in a book actually when she was talking about vision boards. She actually does her vision board, and you could do this with like a long-term goal. But like for me, I like to see it all the time, so I'll set it as my screensaver. But she says she does it and she puts it away and doesn't actually look at it, right? So she sets her goals, but then if you write them down or whatever, put it away somewhere. But then write yourself, what do I need to do this week? Okay, what do I need to do this week? And you just tick off the little boxes. And something we're actually going to talk about in the next part is self-efficacy. And that's that ticking them boxes every week and how that builds motivation. And a lot of the time then, the more you can kind of do these little things every week that build you up every week, and you improve your self-efficacy every week, sometimes you actually completely forget what the goal was. I have a client and she started with me back in October and she was like, I want to be a size 8, right? And I was like, okay, Grant, that's your thing. We'll write it down, but we'll forget about it. Let's focus on the process, right? What do you need to do every week? What are the little milestones we're going to focus on? All of a sudden, it was a couple of weeks ago, she goes, I've started buying size 8 clothes and I actually completely forgot that was my goal. And she was like, and I'm not happy because I am that size. I'm happy because of the things I implemented and the journey along the way. So it's about finding them little nuggets of joy. And yes, the process can be boring, but sometimes then performance goals in between. And noticing, like, a lot of the time, I know I keep coming back to these examples, but like, people are like, I'm going to be really outright here, is like something that moved me a lot was someone was like, I had sex with my husband with no clothes on for the first time in probably 5 years, right? That's, you could say, kind of a process goal. It wasn't a marker, like, and it wasn't a goal to begin with, but it was something that happened along the way, and then she started trusting the process a little bit more. And when things like that start happening in your life, I think it can be a little bit of it takes away then from having that thing just in your line of sight. Because there's a time and place to be constantly focused on it. Like this week, Mum started asking me something, and I was like, whoa, if it's not to do with the event, honestly, it's over my head. I haven't a clue. I was like, all I'm thinking about is the balloon wall, and I was like, I can't think of anything else at the minute. But so you will have tunnel vision. But then for like big goals, it is good to sometimes write them down, be clear on it, but then actually just put it aside. Some people have to do that. Some people need to focus on it all the time. I'll put my vision board as my screensaver. Other people need to write it down and then just put it away and actually just be like, right. And then along the way, they start falling in love with the process somewhere. That's good. That's a great question. But I think what I talk about in the next part is going to tie in a bit more to it as well. Any other questions? My mouth is so dry. It's like, nah. Okay, we will take a little break for like 10 minutes and come back, and I will try and fly through the next one. We're going to talk about motivation, which I think everyone wants to talk about. So we now have a clear idea of what we want to achieve in the next 90 days. We have an idea of what we need to do and the little actionable steps that we need to take in order to achieve them goals, and the little things like along the way that are going to help you. But something that's always going to come up is motivation, because we all think we need to be motivated to do things all the time. So what we're going to talk about in this one is how to cultivate real motivation and how to truly trust the process. Because what if it all works out? Like, we always are like, what if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. What if it all actually just worked out? Like, we're all here today. I'm like, oh my God, I was so stressed about that balloon wall, and the two Ashleys saved my life with the wall. And it worked out. Like, most of the time, doesn't it all end up working out anyway? The way it's supposed to be, it usually does. So we can't talk about motivation without talking about mindset, okay? And I love this. Like, literally, your perception of the world is your reality, right? I always say if there's two people having an argument, there's three sides to that story. There's what one person sees, what the other person sees, and what actually happened, and that's real life. But does anyone see that? Like, your perception is your reality. Therefore, your mindset is everything, okay? So mindset is such a buzzword. So let's get really, really clear on what mindset actually means, okay? It's a set of beliefs that shape how you make sense of the world and yourself. And it is deeply correlated, once again, with your subconscious mind. We talked about this loads today, and we're probably going to hear about it more later on as well, okay? But it ultimately influences how you think, feel, and behave in any given situation. Once again, tying back to what we talked about at the start, it is quite closely linked to your values and stuff as well. And there are two basic mindsets, fixed and growth. And that doesn't necessarily mean you are definitely a fixed mindset or you're definitely a growth mindset. In some areas, you can be fixed. In some areas, you can be growth. But fixed is like, I am good at something or I'm not. What ties in here? What did we talk about before? Perfectionism. I'm good at it or I'm not. Like, a lot of dancers here, okay? We get very comfortable in doing the shows we know and the things we know because we're good at it. But then, what if we actually just tried to do something else? You try to do it once. You try anything in your life to do it once, and it goes like, you're just like, oh, I'm not good at this. But like anything worth having in this life, like, it took a bit of time to get there. So you need to lean into that growth mindset and realize that, again, challenges do help you to grow. And it comes back to that, reframing failure that we talked about. Did you ever look at some people and be like, oh my God, how are they so motivated all the time? Do you have anyone online that you look at? I was hoping someone would say that because I get this all the time and they're like, how do you stay motivated all the time? I'm like, I am not motivated all the time. Like, you see a very small snapshot of my day, a very small snapshot of my week. And I was actually talking about this earlier about specific days in my cycle, 17, 18, and sometimes 19, where I'm like breathe around me wrong and I will throw something heavy at you. I'm like, oh my God, no. Like, and I can tell you, I have the motivation of a dead snail on them days, right? But a lot of people, they fall into the narrative then of telling themselves, like, because they see a lot of this falsity online, that they start thinking like, God, that person's so motivated. Like, maybe I'm just someone who's not very self-motivated. Have you ever said that to yourself? Ever been like, I don't know, I struggle to be a bit self-motivated. And like, a lot of us say that, and a lot of us say that in different areas of our life. We're like, you can be really motivated in one area, but then really, really struggle in other areas to get motivated there. And actually that ties a lot back into what we were talking about in the first one again, values. And that's why you might struggle in some areas to achieve goals in certain areas. In other areas, it's actually quite easy for you because you're like, oof, well, I know I can achieve that. Now, the reason for that is self-efficacy, and we're going to talk about that a lot today. So motivation is an internal state that propels individuals to engage in goal-directed behavior, right? That's what it is. But what it's not is a constant state. It is a journey. And people are like, I told you earlier, if I got €1 for every time I get a message on Instagram every week saying, I'm just not motivated, how do I get motivation? I was motivated, I've lost motivation, how do I get it back? And I wish, like, I really, really wish I had this pill. Like, if the pharmaceutical industry could jump on board to this, I'd actually get on board with it, just be like, there's some motivation. Take it, and you're like, yes, I could tackle the world. But no. And Mel Robbins has a great quote, and I love her. I love her with anything to do with motivation because she's so blunt, right? She said, motivation is garbage because it's never there when you need it. And that's the truth. When you actually need motivation, it's never there. You're like, how do I get it back? How do I find it? How do I look into the distance and be like, come back, motivation? And there are a lot of things, like, and a lot of people that are going to help you. But seeing it as something that you have to rely on is going to be something that you're really, really going to struggle with if you're just relying on it, okay? So one of the best kept secrets that Instagram and all the fitness heads don't want you to know is that no one's motivated all the time. I'm not motivated all the time. I would consider myself to be someone who is quite self-motivated, but I'm not motivated all the time. And it's another one of them things the personal trainers say that like irks me a little bit, but there is a little bit of truth in it. Sometimes it does come down to a little bit of discipline over motivation, right? And we're going to talk about that, not in regards to Drill Sergeant David Goggins' discipline. I'm talking about self-efficacy, which is going to blow your mind when you see motivation from this point of view. Because if you just do things when you feel like doing them, you're never going to reach your goals. And I hate to say that. It's the things you do when you really, really don't want to do them are usually the things that actually inch you way further to your goals. And also you prove to yourself that you can do it when you push yourself to do it when you don't want to. Because motivation is a paradox, and I absolutely love this, right? Because everyone thinks that you have to wait for motivation to start something and that's going to breed action. But actually, action is what needs to come first. Because action breeds motivation. Motivation then breeds more action. Action breeds more motivation. And it's cyclical, and it goes round and around and around. But you have to start somewhere. And the other thing, and I often find this when I onboard clients, is like you need to meet yourself where you're at in life at this moment in time. Because people will come to me and they'll be like, okay, I want to get into health and fitness. What have you done over the last few years? I actually haven't done anything. I've been working a sedentary job the last 5 years. My step count is probably about 4,000 or 5,000 a day, and I haven't done any training. But yeah, I think I'm going to train 6 times in the gym a week. I'm going to have a step count of about 10 to 15,000, and I'm going to do, and I'm like, whoa, right? You're going from 0 to 100, right? No wonder you're going to burn yourself out and lose motivation in 2 weeks. Lower the bar. And I don't mean this to be like, make it piss easy for yourself, right? But lower the bar to entry. Because if you lower the bar and someone tells me they haven't done anything for like X amount of weeks or whatever, can we do 3 workouts for 30 minutes? If you've been doing 5,000 steps a day, can we do 6,000? Right? Again, coming back to that goal setting and then process goals that are within reach, because what I'm going to keep talking about today is when you achieve all these things, then the only way is up, and you increase your belief that you actually can achieve it. But if you have the bar here, maybe you hit it for a week or 2, but then you know yourself. Anytime you've done this, anytime I've done this, thrown myself into something, I've burnt myself out in 2 weeks, and then I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it anymore, right? Has that happened to anyone? Yeah? Preach, preach. So that's the first thing, is we need to stop waiting for motivation to strike to start something. We need to actually just do something, no matter how small. Right, no one is coming to do it for you. But oh my God, ask for help along the way. Like literally, I love this little thing. Like she would have never got to the top of that wall if it wasn't for all these people helping her. But if she just waited for them to push her up, she wasn't going to get there. She had to do some work herself. You have the world at your fingertips, and you have all the best coaches in the world at your fingertips, right? But I love this. I actually said this to a client recently, and it's kind of stepping away from my Google Maps analogy. I'll give you the hammer, but you need to decide where to drive the nail. Everyone wants to help you, and especially in spaces like this, I cannot express to you how much that everyone here just wants everyone to achieve everything, because there's no scarcity mindset and things like this. Like there's enough of everything to go around, right? And if you're in a space where you're made feel like there isn't enough to go around and people don't support you, and I hate to say it, right? But when you get older, you do realize sometimes there's people in your life that when you tell them something amazing, they nearly belittle it. Has anyone had that? Yeah, because they think, okay, right, well, you're successful, therefore if you're successful, that takes away from my success. But if you surround yourself with people like this, who only want the best for you, and actually, I have a little group chat, and we actually were talking about this literally yesterday, and we were like, isn't it so amazing that we have friends that actually never in all our lives of knowing each other felt like we were competitions with each other, and we actually always just wanted the best for each other. And it's true, and I was like, but you have to make sure that you're surrounding yourself with that. And this is where environment comes in quite important. It's because I was on a podcast recently, and they were like, I was asking them, do you think we're the product of the 5 people we hang around with the most? And the lads had the best answer for me. They were like, I don't think so anymore. I think you're the product of what you consume the most. What's your Instagram feed like? What's your TikTok feed like, right? But then equally, who are you spending your time with? Are you spending your time with people who actually really want to see you do really well and are like fucking slay queen every time something happens? Or have you got friends that'll barely say good luck or well done when you do something? Like, I'm not saying cut these people out of your life, but don't keep putting yourself in the situation where you have to keep going back to these people. Again, insanity, expecting a different result. And this is where boundaries comes in. I'm not going to talk about boundaries today, that's a lecture in and of itself, but boundaries with people is really important. So now we're going to come on to this. So excited to talk about this, right? Probably one of the most interesting things with regards to motivation, and it's self-efficacy, okay? Self-efficacy is based on an individual's belief in their own capacity to achieve, while motivation is based on the individual's desire to achieve. So one of these is our belief that we can do it, and the other one is our desire to do it. And people tend to get these two mixed up, okay? Now, a lot of things come into play when it comes to self-efficacy, okay? And you'll see them here. We're not going to go too far into this. But people often think that if you have high self-efficacy, you're going to have high motivation. And it's true. It is true. People with a higher self-efficacy do tend to have more motivation because they actually believe they can achieve it, okay? And that's really important, the self-belief that you can achieve it. But that doesn't necessarily mean that if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of self-efficacy, you can't be motivated, because how can you change this? You fucking push yourself out of your comfort zone every damn week. And this is something when I launched my business, I was like, everything was terrifying, like terrifying. Even deciding what app I wanted to use with my clients, it was terrifying, right? But every time I did something and I pushed myself out of my comfort zone, it paid off. So over the last couple of years, I've constantly been trying to improve my self-efficacy. So therefore, my belief that I can actually do more shit, basically, has improved. And that all comes down to constantly, the only way you can control this is by pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And I try to say to people, try to do it every week, no matter what it is. Maybe you're someone who's terrified to speak up in meetings, which, by the way, ironically, I used to be that person. I was like, don't ask me, I don't want to talk, I am up here doing a public speaking event, and I swear to God, I still won't answer a phone call if it rings. So maybe my goal for next week is answer phone calls when I don't know the number, push myself out of the comfort zone. But no matter what it is, can you think of one thing, like when you were saying about like standing up for yourselves and stuff like that in them work scenarios, that's pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, but now you know you can do it. and you improve your self-efficacy, which improves your motivation. So these are actually some actionable steps. You're like, all right, that's great. I know what motivation is. I know what self-efficacy is. Now tell me how the fuck to get it, how to do it, how to sustain it, right? So firstly, you have to realize that it's created and sustained through momentum and movement. So starting small is important, but actually just keeping the cogs turning is also important. And I love that quote that's been going around recently where they're like, if all you can give on one given week is 40%, then that is your 100% that week. And that's really important to realize, because we think we need to do 100% every week in order to get there. But some weeks all we have is 40%. And if that's all you can give, you're still going in the right direction. Okay? Stop trying to go from 0 to 100. And here we get back to small, achievable goals, daily, weekly. Sit down with yourself and be like, all right, okay, what is really manageable within my timetable this week with work and everything? And how can I fit this in? Because you get to the end of the week and you tick the boxes. And you go, oh, I fucking did it. Look at all these boxes ticked. You improve your self-efficacy. What's that going to do? Give you more motivation. But if you set the bar up here and you can't tick the boxes, you're like, fuck the boxes and I don't want to do this and I'm done and I have no motivation. Now, I'm not saying lower the bar too much, but start small and build up, especially when you're trying to implement new habits, okay? Because then the only way is up. And the last thing I'll say on this is plan, plan, plan. Don't break a promise to yourself. And try and use the weekends to actually build the life you want, as opposed to escape the life you had. Now, I used to be Monday to Friday warrior. Train hard Monday to Friday. Nutrition on point Monday to Friday. Hit Friday, straight to the pub. Absolutely riot all weekend, and then we're back to it Monday. And I was counting down every single day during the week to get to Friday. Has anyone worked a Monday to Friday job? Okay, have you ever felt like that? Where you're just like, it's Monday, how many hours do I actually have until I get to Friday? I just got to a point then where I was like, oh my God, if I'm constantly spending 5 days out of my 7 days a week counting down to Friday, like what kind of life is this like? So it's like, can you start incorporating things that, no, and I understand people who work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, they need to let their hair down at the weekend and enjoy themselves. But doing things at the weekend to actually build the life you want and not escape the life you have is probably one of the biggest things you can do to shift your mindset as well, to actually keep you motivated to go. So like, I'm not saying don't go out ever again. I'm saying like the odd weekend, can you be like, maybe actually I'm going to go and I'm going to do a hike or something this weekend. And you feel great then going into the week, and then maybe you're not actually counting down the days so much that week and you notice some shift. So using the weekend to actually build the life you want instead of escape the life you have. So people want to know, what can I do absolutely now when I have no motivation and I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I have to go to the gym, I have to go to the gym. So this is one of my favorite things, right? 5-second rule. Now, I actually like to incorporate this and tie this into my ridiculous caffeine habit that I'm completely letting myself away with because I quit drinking recently. So I'm like, my caffeine addiction is absolutely fine. I was like, we're not even thinking about that right now. But the 5-second rule, have any of you heard of it? Mel Robbins' 5-second rule. Okay, so she wrote a whole book on this, which I actually think, I didn't read it, but I'm pretty sure I tied it in quite well here. You basically count down from 5, okay? And the reason behind this is when you have an instinct to act on a goal, you have to move. Within 5 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And just go, right? Because, do you ever notice you're like, I am going to do this. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go for a walk, whatever it is. And then you're like, well, maybe if I go later, then I can actually do that, and then I can pick up the dinner there, and maybe I'll do this first. And actually, I need to do a wash, and already you've talked yourself out doing the thing that you said you were going to do, because your mind is like, I am going to implement some, like what we talked in the first half, instant gratification things here to put the thing back, right? So I love to tie this to coffee. I'm not recommending it. I'm recommending the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But me personally, right, I recently started running. I despise running. I hate it with every fiber of my being. I love weight training. I love yoga. I love walking. To get myself out the door and to do that, it doesn't take a lot, but I hate running. So for my clients, because I love them so much, I said, I am going to put myself in a situation where I have to do something I really hate. And I cracked my first 5K last week, actually, so that was kind of cool. I still hate running. But something I had to do was I really had to implement these things. So it was good study, actually, for this, because it forced me to actually implement some of these things. I would get up, and I have to do it first thing in the morning if I don't enjoy it. And I literally was like, right, have my coffee. Sarah's going to kill me because she's a specialist in gut health. And no, I hadn't had a breakfast. I just had water and coffee. She'll let me off this one time. Just for the runs, I have to do it. And I literally put the coffee down and I go, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Out of your head, into your body, out the door. And I have the keys in my hand and I'm locking the door and I'm moving before I give myself time to be like, I don't want to do it. And then I'll be like, maybe I'll go later. And actually, no, I might just have some toast. And then I'll just scroll on social media. You've talked yourself out of it. So in the moment when you have to do it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, procrastination kills productivity. And I'm not here to be one of them people, grind harder. I'm not. But like if it's something that's really frustrating you that you're struggling to implement, that does come in handy. The other thing is tell yourself you're going to do it for 10 minutes and see how you feel. Like, I always say to myself, like, I'm someone who likes distances and stuff as opposed to time, and I like weights as opposed, a lot of stuff like that. So for me, I'll be like, I am going to do 1 kilometer, and if I still am screaming out in my ears that I want to stop this, I'll stop. But I'm going to do the first kilometer and see how I feel. Most of the time, you tell yourself, right, the college thing, you need to start, do it for 10 minutes, right? If you still are like, fuck this, I don't want to do this, then stop after the 10 minutes. Give yourself unconditional permission to stop after 10 minutes. You've tried. Most of the time when you actually start something, it's the hardest part, because I was in that 1 kilometer and I was like, I still hate this. Oh, but feck it, I've done a kilometer, I'll keep going. And that's the day I cracked my 5K, right? Still hate it. But anyway, my friend's like, 10K now. I was like, whoa, no. But it comes back to that thing again about starting something small, all or nothing to always something. It's one of the most powerful things. And sometimes you actually have to be the child and the adult in your brain, right? I have this child, she's bold Nerissa, she's a brat, right? And I have adult Nerissa, and you can call this your higher power, your lower self, whatever way you want to look at it. The more times that adult person in your brain talks and lays down the law to that lower self who doesn't want to do things, you improve once again your self-efficacy and the belief that you can do it. But you have to keep being the adult, because you know if you have a kid and they want ice cream and then you're like, I'll just give them ice cream this once, then they think they can have ice cream all the time. So you have to keep being the adult when it comes to something. And that's not me saying being really hard on yourself and like never take breaks and grind harder. I'm saying if you're someone who's feeling very stuck and you're really struggling to start something, it is always harder at the start, but the more you kind of practice these things, people will be like, Nerissa, you're so motivated. It took years of doing all this stuff to be someone who can actually figure out what's working and just get it done. That's not to say I do it every day, but I mean, like, I'm going to have a serious couch day tomorrow. I also plan on going completely MIA on social media for the next week. So if anyone thinks I'm ghosting them, I'm not. I just can't talk to anyone because I've talked so much today. Right, the next thing, I love this, cognitive reframing and the power of choice, okay? So cognitive reframing is a technique used to shift your mindset so you're able to look at a situation, person, or relationship from a slightly different perspective. This is where actually therapists and stuff come in really, really handy. It's where a coach comes in handy. You are so tunnel vision on your thoughts and your emotions about something, you can't see the trees through the forest. A coach goes, well, what about looking at it from this point of view? Or a friend says, what about looking at it from this point of view? And all of a sudden you're like, God, I didn't even think of that, right? So it's shifting your perspective. And what I like to do here when it's something you don't really want to do, but you have to do, you change the narrative and you change it from I have to I get to. And I know it can sound really corny, and I keep bringing it back to the run, but honestly, the runs are the killer for me. Like, it's the thing my mind is like really, really struggles with. That's why all of this, I have to use it for this. I said to myself, I am so lucky that I am actually in a position where I can go out on this lovely morning around here. I feel safe with my 2 legs and my body that although it's screaming, fuck this, I don't want to do it, like I can still do it. I get to do it. So switching that narrative from I have to I get to. And the power of the internal narrative we're saying to ourselves, this kind of, I'm going off the beaten track here, I apologize, but really quickly, people saying, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm fat, I'm this. You continue to repeat this narrative in your head that you believe it. Instead of that, say, I feel anxious. Now, I would be someone who has quite an anxious personality, very high energy, okay? But I never, ever succumb to the fact that I'm saying, I always say I am feeling anxious, and everyone feels a little bit depressed. And now I'm not talking about people who have general anxiety disorder, chronic depression. That's not what I'm talking about. But I think more people need to speak up about the fact that it's okay to feel like this, and it's okay to feel your feelings, and to understand that you're not alone. Everyone does feel a little bit depressed and a little bit anxious sometimes. And not enough people, like we were talking about mental health earlier, not enough people are actually just speaking up and being like, I do feel really, really anxious, and I'm going through a period of my life where I do feel really, really anxious. Again, my days 17, 18, 19, not only am I horrible to be around, but also I am very anxious on those days, and like close to panic attack anxious. But I keep saying to myself, I feel anxious, this too shall pass, this too shall pass, this too shall pass. Because the narrative you're telling yourself in your head is your reality, okay? So the last few things here. When you need to move now, and I'm talking about now, we need to do it now. You need to get out of your mind and into your body, so you need to just move, whatever that is. We do some really cool energy work, like, I don't think anyone's doing it today, but like, we were doing it recently, I can't remember where I was, but everyone was just like shaking, right? Just to like, the yoga thing we were at, yes. And she was like, just jump around. And instantly the energy in the room changed, because everyone got out of their head and into their body, and they just relaxed a bit. Like what we did this morning as well, out of your head and into your body, focusing on your breath. And the more we can get out of our heads and into our bodies, it can really help when we're really struggling to get just out of the chair, out of the bed, out of the couch. But when you have time to contemplate life, so I'm not really talking so much now about like when you need to move now, but actually visualizing success and how it will feel. Again, coming back to that feeling as opposed to the outcome. How is that outcome going to feel as opposed to look, okay? And today I just said, I can't wait to actually just have that feeling at the end of the day that everyone had a really good day, that I had a really good day, and it was just an amazing day. That feeling, not what it was going to look like. I actually wanted to focus on how it was going to feel, right? And that can be a huge motivator, especially when you're like worried about things, okay? Now, another thing is extrinsic motivation, which is kind of like saying to a kid, if you pass your exams, I'll give you a PS5. Now, in the moment, they'll probably work really hard, pass their exams. It's not going to keep them motivated forever, but extrinsic motivators, like they do have a place sometimes. And what I like to do here is, I quit drinking, I'm on day 41 at the moment. So every week, I put €50 into a sober account that I spend on myself that I would not normally spend. Like, it's not allowed to go on bills, even though, fuck me, my electricity bill the other day, I was like, whoa, I really should go on that. But I was like, I refuse to spend it on that. It gets spent on something that I want for myself that I wouldn't normally spend for myself. And it's not to rely on that for motivation, but if it's something that gives you a little bit of a reward along the way, then implementing these along with how you want to feel and focusing on the person you want to become, I do think there's a little place for them as well. And as I said, like at the start, the impact of our environment, who we're spending time with, like, are they actually building you up and motivating you? When you tell them your goals, are they like, oh my God, that's amazing, yeah, how can I support you? Or are they like if I told someone now that I was like, yeah, I've quit the drink now, I don't know, originally it was for 90 days, but I've been reading a lot of things and I don't know, maybe I'll do a year or whatever. If I have someone in my life who's going to turn around to me now and be like, do you not think you're going to be really shit crack? Now, instantly, that is a red flag, because firstly, they're projecting their feelings onto you. So you need to realize that when you're making these big decisions. But equally, if it's not someone who's going to be like, unless it's something harmful you're doing to yourself, if it's something actually bigging you up and you decide like, this is a really important thing, if they're not telling you, how can I support you in this decision, question your relationship with them. I'm not saying cut people out. Do not cut people out. Don't ghost people. And just realize that a lot of the time when you make these big decisions, these big life-changing decisions with people that you've known your whole life, sometimes when they're saying things, they might be shadowing back to you some concerns themselves. So that's equally important. And the role of emotions, like realizing that like literally all your emotions are going to pass, like this wave. They're going to come, they're going to go. Like motivation, it's going to come and it's going to go. But realizing that when you go through these periods of maybe lower energy and lower motivation, and we're coming into autumn and it's a lot more coming inwards, realizing that that doesn't necessarily mean you're not motivated. You're just going through a period of your life where maybe you do need to just take things a little bit more chill. We don't have to be grind all the time, says me who has grinded for 14 days solid, but we'll sleep all day tomorrow. So realizing that we're not our emotions, we're not our thoughts, like we're the observer of these, and again, we have more power than we think we do. Because if you don't take the risks, nothing will change. So the last thing I'm going to touch on here is the process. I love it. How to trust the process. I'm loving the absolutely weird filter this projector is giving all these colors. It's hilarious. So I always say to people, like, I'm not against before and after photos, by the way. I think they're a great measure of how far someone has come, but they don't tell you anything about what happened in between. When I say to people, how long did it take me to get from this? They're like, 6 weeks, 6 months. And I was like, you could argue 6 months, but I would also argue years, because the person on the left also was dancing their whole life. They were active their whole life. The only reason I'm pulling this up for you is because people look at things like this online, and this is what deters them from falling in love with the process, because this is just once again highlighting an outcome, right? But from point A to point B, a lot of things changed, and it was lifestyle factors. And actually, I just kind of fell in love with the process of it. But that didn't take 6 weeks. It didn't take 6 months. It took years, okay? And it's again coming back to that thing that we said at the start. I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when I get the fiance. I'll be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I have kids. I'll be happy when I have the house. Okay, now I need a promotion. Now I need more money. Now I need another new car. If you keep placing your happiness in the future, it's impossible to fall in love with the process. Can you find the little bits of joy every single day in anything you're doing? Because then you actually do, over time, realize that along the way and taking stock of all these things, you're like, oh, wow, I think I'm actually just really, really enjoying life right now. So fall in love with the process and the results will follow. But as I said at the start, biggest barriers I see to people not achieving their goals, patience and quitting. They're the only two things. And actually, like, you could argue anything else people says. I could write a book on mindset principles that impede on people achieving their goals, but actually what it comes down to is if they could just practice a bit more patience and actually not quit, then they will achieve anything. And you can achieve everything, but you have to just keep trying. And ideally, the last thing here I will say is focusing on how you're feeling as opposed to looking, how a scenario is looking, how your life is looking. How do you want to feel? If you do want to focus on the husband, the wife, the new job, whatever, that's amazing. Focus on it. But focus on how you want to feel in that moment. Because then when you get to it and you feel it, you're like, wow. Because a lot of the time you'll get to it and look around and you'll be like, eh. But feelings are such a good guidepost for us. You're always one decision away from a totally different life.
I really hope you enjoyed that episode. Please don't forget to give this a rating on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you are listening to your podcast. And don't forget to subscribe and share if you feel called, maybe with a friend or a family. Or it'd be amazing if you could share it on social media and give me a tag, Nerissa_Shea Fitness. As always, your support is greatly appreciated, and I hope you have an incredible day.